working with my coach EFT practitioner, I was talking about all the different things that I juggle. Parenting, got grown kids, I've got a high schooler, caring for my dad, my jobs. And we were doing kind of a visual exercise. And I described what it felt like. And I said, I'm juggling all these balls, and I'm standing on a ball that rolls around. And that ball is on a treadmill. And so if here I am balancing on this ball that's moving, the moving ball is on a treadmill, and I'm juggling like 10 balls in the air or whatever. And so we talked about, what can I do? I was like, well, I can step off the treadmill. And then we turned the balls into balloons. So I didn't have to be. And I envisioned them of all different colors, and that they were balloons that we released the strings. And if I needed to address one, I'd just bring it to me and I could let them go as I needed. So they were kind of floating around me instead of me having to juggle them. So this was a visual exercise to help me step out of this fast-paced treadmill, image of all the things that I'm doing. And the idea with this visual imagery is to take this and think about it and think about the balloons and the colors. And the one thing I did with it is, in my planner book, when I spell out what I'm doing, I gave everybody a different color. If I'm taking care of my dad, it's blue. If it's my daughter in high school, her stuff is green. If it's me stuff that empowers me, that lifts me up, it's purple. If it's just doctor's appointments and things, it's red. If it's Don and me time, it's pink. Then there's yellow is family time. So I gave all these things colors, and then my going to work as an OT was black. Um, and and I have only thought about it a handful of times. And it's something I'd like to get into more practice of like thinking about it and kind of visualizing and being like, okay, they're balloons, Gina. You can let them float. It's a sort of little bit of letting go of control. You feel like you have to control everything, and yet you don't have control, right? You throw a ball up in the air, you don't have control of it coming down and what ball's coming next. And the reality of it is it's a lot of letting go, a lot of loosening my grip. Like when I turned them into balloons, it was like, okay, I got to let go of the grip on the strings. And that's why I released the strings. And instead of strings, they were just helium balloons that would move with my energy and come to me as needed, and I could release them as needed. Just thinking about that now, I had another session today with Ruthie, the great EFT practitioner, next to my husband. And that letting go of control, it's a difficult thing.
Mhm.
And
Well, we have this idea that we can, a lot of people have a naive idea that they can control everything, and you can't.
this is where we introduce ourselves.
Oh, yes. Hello, this is Don.
And this is Gina with Focused Healthy Family. And we had a different kind of story today, and we're glad you're joining us. This is podcast number 134. We're getting up there in numbers.
Yep.
So we're talking about the art of juggling, parenting, and education. Kind of going to bring down a different ball today, a different balloon. Because between my multiple jobs in geriatrics and caring for my dad, I need to step into something different today. And so we've chosen to
The
look
chosen one.
at education.
Yes, we're stepping very different, transitioning very differently into that at the present time, which is
Yes.
really kind of cool in a way.
Before we go into some of those things, I want to ask, what does education mean to you, Don? What does it mean to be educated?
Hmm. That's a good question because it's a tough question in the fact of you could say education is school and all of that, but somebody said to me one time, we're all smart in our own thing. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's kind of like we're knowledgeable in the realm of who we are and what we are and what we do. So, education to me is something that, well, it goes back to our CWG days too, and the fact that we're not, the belief there was we're not here to learn, we're here to remember that we have instilled in us a lot of the knowledge we need, and it's just a matter of becoming aware of it, waking up to it, I guess, is a good way. Is that I think that's kind of what I so I mean that's a lot of different
Yeah,
answers,
that's
but it's education isn't I don't think it's what we as society think it is.
so along those lines of everybody having gifts and talents. I have this quote. Everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid.
Yeah, I like that.
And it says it's attributed to Einstein, although there's no evidence he ever said it. And in the homeschooling world, I've seen it as a meme where, you know, if education is like that, if you expect all kids to learn in the same way, you're not going to teach a fish to climb a tree. You're not going to teach a squirrel to swim.
Well, in this book I'm reading, which I hope to have the author on at some point, but he talks about we kind of have um, this path that we believe kids should go down. You get a good education, you make good grades, you go to college, you get a good career, you get married, kind of, oh, hello, kitty. Ow, 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 the cat is digging into my leg. Yeah, thank you very much, cat. Um, so,
You get a career, you go down this
yeah,
path,
it's
you get
the almost like a white picket fence idea of life, and that isn't necessarily the path for everybody. It's not a generalized one. Oh, you're going to leave me to do this. I have to now fill in the gaps here. Um, just I don't think it was anything I said. Oh, she's back. Okay, well, I feel a little safe now. I just said,
the cat likes to join us when we're on a call,
and
and
now I've lost my thought pattern too.
I'm wearing
Um,
shorts, so we want a blanket. Now she
but
can sit on my lap. So,
so yeah, it does. It's not a one path fits all. And same thing with education.
and taking it back a step further from that idea, what is education? What is school? School was developed so that the common person could get an education because way back, only the wealthy people
Yeah,
could afford to go to school. And so public schools were started so that everybody could get an education. And way back, it was about learning to read and write. Not everybody
yeah.
learned to do that. And here's the little gremlin, as I call her, that likes to sit with us, say hi to our public. Um, this is Sunshine. She doesn't want to look. So thinking about that. So
That's
thinking
another
about
whole category
yes,
to go down some
another
other
one of
time.
my juggling aspects are pets. So thinking about that aspect in education and Don, you and I started school when kindergarten was pretty new. I mean, I know we started school 11 years apart, and
Yeah.
yet when I had kindergarten, it was held in the gymnasium of the school in Canton, Ohio, because it was kind of new that they didn't quite have a kindergarten classroom set up. And I thought you told me that
Well, they
when
the
you went to school in St. Louis, it was
well we I
you were in
went
Catholic
to
school.
all Catholic school, but Catholic school didn't have kindergarten.
Well, you went to public school
So I
kindergarten?
went to a public school kindergarten, the publics as we called them back then.
And I know
Um,
mine was a half day.
and it was in a way it was now as I look back at it compared to what they do now,
Oh, well,
it was
yeah.
more of a just a Mother's Day out kind of in a way.
It was preschool. It was kindergarten was set up as in preparation for school. It was learning the alphabet, learning
Yeah. But it was very light, that wasn't a heavy,
story
it was
time and
story time, nap time,
oh yeah.
that kind of stuff. So, um,
So it was kind of prepping kids for school.
yeah,
And now people call um there's pre-K.
yeah.
So
Oh my
not
gosh.
just to get into kindergarten at the age of 5, but you got to go to pre-K to really prep kids for learning that it needs to start sooner. And then I love how when kids go to daycare, we call it school. Our oldest went to Mother's Morning Out, and we
Yeah.
called it preschool. And he started it when he was a year old. And it wasn't preschool, it was part-time daycare, but we called it that because we felt better about
Yeah.
using that name.
The bye-bye buggy.
And, you know, and this whole idea that we need to start them learning sooner. And there is the contrast of kids who don't grow up in a home where there's books, where parents are reading to them, right? There are a large number of American children, despite what I heard a politician say about he doesn't know anybody who is hungry. And any American children who are gonna go hungry. There are kids who don't have food at home, who depend on eating at school. There are kids who
Don't have a lot of books
benefit
and
from their parents are not singing songs to them and learning the alphabet from a young age. So yeah, these are great opportunities
Mhm.
for many kids and um, great opportunities to introduce them to these concepts, but expecting kids to be reading at kindergarten where I learned I mean, I already knew the letters of the alphabet, but I distinctly remember we had a program. It was the letter people. They were, they each had a video that we watched. This is 1976. And each letter person, I know you were in high school, Don, had a song and a video that we watched, probably on reel to reel. And there was an inflatable balloon with a face. And there was Miss A was at
Mm.
you. And um um, Miss O was obstinate because my family called me obstinate. And so you can do these kinds of things with kids at 3, 4, whatever age. But expecting to push them to learn more sooner and
Yeah.
faster is really not in their best interest. And I'll kind of
Well, it kind of
step
gets them,
away from getting into that in
almost
more.
gets them turned away from wanting to read in a
Well,
way.
if you force someone to learn to read when their brain isn't ready, you're causing problems
Yeah.
instead of helping to advocate. So you can still introduce, you can have these opportunities, you can have pre-K, you can have preschool and have educational components to it. Yet kids learn through play.
Yeah.
We had letter people, and they need playful experiences. You can incorporate you don't have to sit down and have a curriculum to learn these basics. With homeschooling, I created a website, Charlotte Homeschooling, to help parents connect with information and resources. I created it for the greater Charlotte, North Carolina area to find the resources because when I started, the internet was still pretty fresh and it was hard to locate different resources out there. And there wasn't Facebook yet. There was all these different things. And to be able to um, help others who decided to educate their kids at home. And the cat is causing me to get distracted here with my thoughts. So over the years, I'd have people come, oh, I want to homeschool my kids, and I'm worried about what curriculum to choose. It's like, well, how old is your kid? They're 3 or they're 4. And I'm like, play with your kid. Like, you don't need a curriculum.
Well, yeah, and
um, you play, you interact, you take them to the post office, you talk about what you're doing, you like take extra time to do these things in your
chalk draw
day.
in the driveway.
You go to the grocery store, you have conversations, you go on walks, you go to the park, you go to the museums, you read lots of books, you go to the library, and I could have a whole podcast on education and child-led learning and not having to have strict subjects and schedules and these kinds of things yet. Um, so, education, like it's turned into daycare. There's full-time kindergarten now because parents need to take their kids somewhere. I went half day. Some kids had morning kindergarten, some kids had afternoon kindergarten. But because the way the economy is, parents, it's much more difficult to stay at home
Yeah.
and have one parent at home to be able to have the luxury of picking your kid up midday and not having to be at school all day, that it's now like we parents depend on it. They depend on school. There's before school, there's after school because they've got to get to their job, because they've got to get to work. And
Well, and it's become kind of a more of a process, almost like a factory in a way of churning the kids out, getting them in and putting them through and getting them to it's not some I listen sometimes to them talk about and I'm sure what exactly I'm talking about. I'm trying to remember where some of this came from, but they just got to get them through whatever, they got to push them. They're low on this side. Well, we got to put all the emphasis here and
well, it's
get it
the
up.
standardized tests now. We homeschooled our kids from I like to say from birth, but when our son was 3 or 4, we kind of discovered this world and began to pursue it. Went to a meeting of a new charter school that was forming in our area and listened to them speak. And I heard things I didn't like and went, nope. And we delved into the world of homeschooling. And I always said I'd do this as long as it was working for my kids. And our youngest, the age of 15, decided she wants public school. And so we scrambled over the summer because we were in a new county, brand new to us, and figuring out the system and the
Talk about
process.
juggling. You know,
And oh, well, my dad's going in and out of the hospital
yeah.
after we moved him to memory care and figuring things out. So she's going to a school that's not her assigned school. And so therefore they don't provide transportation. And it's funny because the school she's not assigned to is closer to us. But
Yeah, which is nice, for us.
um so yes, and we have the luxury of yes, she met someone in school who all their friends from middle school went to a different high school, but the way the zoning was, she wasn't zoned to go to that high school as them, and her mom is not able to drive her to school and pick her up. And so she's stuck going to the high school that my daughter chose to go to, but it's because her other friends are at a different school, whereas my daughter went into this school just new to the county. We don't know anybody. There's very few kids in our neighborhood, and we haven't met the families of the kids with teens. Um, so we have that luxury of being able to drive her and pick her up from school. And to me, it's exciting because I want to hear what she has to say. I'm so used to being involved in her educational process. And it's quite interesting hearing her stories and perspective of thing and the kids who are annoying in class and who are talking. And what she doesn't understand is they have been sitting in a desk since they were at least 5 years old for 6, 7 hours a day, 5 days a week. And now they're 14, 15, 16, whatever. And
I get a kick out because it happened also with our oldest one
community
community
college
college. Thank you.
started at 16.
And I remember him coming home one day and going, "These kids don't want to learn. What are they doing? Why are they even here if they're not, he was focused, and so is our youngest daughter is very focused the same way because she's said kind of the same thing. These kids,
They're not paying
they're not paying
attention.
attention.
They're
Why are
talk
they doing that?
they're
I want to
talking over
learn.
the teacher
And
and
I find it interesting, and I think that's kind of I don't know what I say, not the downside of school, but it's just,
well,
it's gotten them to a point where don't, they're pushed into it so much that they don't want to be there. They
the
don't.
big reason that I chose to homeschool the kids is because we are born with the innate love of learning,
Mhm.
and school can push that out of you. I love school. I did great in school, but
I
when I
did.
graduated college, I did not want to pick a book up and read it. It took me, I don't know how long to read a book for pleasure because I was so done with all the forced reading. And so I wanted to nurture that love of learning. And, you talk about self-directed education, child-led learning. If a kid is interested and invested, that's when they're learning. If they're not interested and invested, it's like throwing marshmallows at someone and calling it eating. They're not going to absorb it. They're not going to take it in because they don't have the interest and the desire and the passion to be involved in it. And is it really beneficial to force kids to learn a little bit about a lot of different things that 20 years from now they'll remember very little of and then go into one specialty area anyhow for their job versus giving them the opportunity to pursue what's interesting to them? Um,
But
you know, I used to say, watch the show Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? I don't think it's not airing any longer, but the point is you have adults on there and fifth graders, and the adults don't know the things that are taught in fifth grade because why? We're forced to learn all these things that we don't remember. And is it essential that we get thrown all this information about all these different things that are kind of meaningless to us that we memorize to spit out and regurgitate on a test so that we can move on to the next class? And I'm not saying all school is that way at all. And sure, we need to learn pieces of history and information and math and English and reading. I mean, that's everywhere. Um, and
why,
yet the idea of it meaning something and mattering. Go ahead.
why just, I guess kind of a question or a thought that for, do you think, right now, and I don't think we're alone in this, how busy life is, like you say, that's why we're talking about juggling and we're juggling so many things. Do you think, how does school play into that? Does school cause a little bit more busyness or more juggling than what we encountered from homeschooling? I don't know if that's a fair question or not, but it's just something that kind of crossed my mind is, you know, because I always tell people I feel like we're going like 90 miles an hour with wind gust of about 150, and has school made that more or less or anyway, that just a thought.
Before I go into that, so Don, you can work on that visualization of going 90 miles an hour with wind
That's
gusts,
true.
because that
That's
sounds a
good.
lot like me standing on my treadmill with a rolling ball. Um,
So just a thought for you to kind of
and it's not black and white.
no.
School provides structure. People work jobs, unlike us, that where they have to be somewhere at a certain time and they have to work a certain number of hours. And so our families are scattered for the most part. We don't have families where we have parents and things that can help with picking kids up and taking care of kids and that. And so there's a sense of structure, there's a sense of regularity, which is important to kids. And yet having 7, 8 hour school day, having homework, then you have extracurriculars and you have sports or other activities that you're attending to after school. And this leads to sleep deprivation and kids not having free time to explore things. You can
Yeah.
start a kid in sports at like, 2 years old. They could start soccer um, and
And
they
that
can do it their whole life. And, by the time they're 15, like, are they doing this because they like it or are they doing it
because
because
it's habit almost or whatever.
it's hard to know? Um,
But I'll tell you, I remember talking about like 3-year-olds. I can still remember, and this was way back when I think it was one of Vernon's kids. Really, I mean,
this is Don's brother.
he was I'm thinking he was probably 3 or 4 and he was in soccer. And to watch these games it was so humorous, because someone would be sitting there picking their nose. The goalie, I remember sitting there picking his nose, kind of looking around, and they'd shoot a ball past him and then they'd kick a ball and then just stop, and I can still hear my brother going, "Run, run," But anyway, I'm sorry. That just brought that memory, and it was a fun memory because I watched
Right.
quite
And
a few
so,
of his games.
that's a whole nother topic of
Yeah, it
getting
is.
kids in an organized sport
Yeah,
that's competitive when they're still learning their motor skills and processing all of these kinds of things. Yeah, there's all these different things that we get our kids involved in that we have to step away sometimes and go, is this for them or is this
Yeah.
for us?
Are we living our life through them, what we didn't achieve in ourselves, and that's,
And maybe you love sports and you've raised your family that way and they grew up loving sports. There's nothing wrong with that, and that's okay. Yet there's a point where it's like what you got to do, what you have to do. And I remember I did softball. I started it in third grade and I didn't do that well that year because apparently I needed glasses and I got glasses and I could hit the ball all of a sudden. And we moved and it was a church-based softball league. We had t-shirts. It was fun. It was slow pitch softball. I enjoyed it. I did well.
hmm,
We moved when I was going into seventh grade and I joined the softball team and it was competitive. They were teaching kids to slide. There were uniforms and it was like, this is not fun anymore. And I chose to quit, and yet I felt like I was labeled a quitter.
hmm, yeah.
And I remember there was something again, there was practice or something, and my friend was having a sleepover party, and I wanted to go to my friend's thing. And yet it wasn't about that one day choice. It was about this is not fun. I don't like the other girls on this team. It doesn't feel good to me. The energy, I don't want to learn to slide. I didn't want to slide into a base. I was, what, 13 years old. I liked hitting the ball and running to the bases. I liked that part of, but yeah, it was like this was not something I wanted to do. And yet I felt that label. And it's like I didn't have another avenue to then go into. It's like when I was even younger, I did acrobats. We live in Ohio, and it was basically gymnastics, but all floor, on the mats. And we moved and they didn't have that. And my mom put me in a gymnastics class and I had to stand on a balance beam with this extreme fear of heights. And I hated every minute of it. I just wanted to do the floor stuff. And I quit that after a while because it was, and it's sad because I really enjoyed the
Yeah,
acrobats part. I really enjoyed. I mean, I was good at cartwheels and flips and all this kind of stuff, and I liked it. Just like I liked the fun softball league that then turned into this sliding game. And um, and so, yeah, I could have forced myself to stay in it. My parents could have forced me to stick with it. I could have been pushed into this avenue. And so there's so many things like that in life. And things can be so competitive, whether it's sports or school. Now there's like waiting lists to get into the best preschools and the best, there's all this, you watch these shows, tends to be based out of New York City, and to get into the best preschool, you get on a waiting list from when they're born, and
yeah, that you have
people
to,
pay more money than I paid to go to college to get their kids in like preschools and kindergarten. It's outrageous. And why?
yeah,
Why? Do we really think that spending all that money and having all those fancy opportunities are really providing our kids a better education?
it's probably doing the opposite at that young of an age to push them into it versus being able to play and learn from play and do like you were talking
Well,
about.
and it's the idea of the fish, making a fish learn to climb a tree and it's
Yeah,
going to think it's stupid. We're all different. Some kids thrive on competition and the competitive sports, and some I did well in school. I there were many aspects that
I
I
didn't.
didn't like looking back. There were things I didn't have opportunities to do more writing in high school. It's really very sad how little I did, and I loved writing. And yet it's not a one size fits all.
Well, you brought up sliding. I had somebody slide into me and hurt me
Oh
and
yeah.
injure me. So I
And
was not a
that
sports
wasn't a
person.
team. That was weren't you playing
No,
on recess, or
well, every at recess, it was every recess you could be. Well, I'm trying to
was
remember
it
because it seemed
kickball or
like it
was it
was
baseball?
not. No, no, that's a good question. I think it was might have been kickball, but it wasn't. It wasn't. it was supposedly optional, but that you pretty much got forced into playing. And I hated, I was just not good at sports. At least that's the way I thought anyway, I felt. And I got pushed into it all the time. And my parents would, well, I shouldn't, but they would say, "Oh, come on, you need to do this. That's what boys do, you know." And I'm like, "Not me. I don't want to." But I did. I had to do it anyway. And I had track when I was in high school, and my
Oh,
coach was the worst. He, I was not good at track. I didn't really, but it was like I had to pick a sport kind of thing,
oh,
and
is that how
it
that
was
happened?
football, basketball, and baseball. And I didn't really. I did a little bit of basketball one time, and that to me was such a running. All you did, it seemed like to me, was you ran this way over to that side, and then you ran back to this side, and then you ran to this side, and then you ran to this. That's all it was to me. It was this. I was bored and I hated it, and so yeah, it was. And then in track, I was terrible, and the coach put his daughter up against me, and then pinned it to everybody in school that I was beaten by a girl, and he played on that, and I still dislike him to this day because of that. It was just a really rude thing to do. I don't mind his daughter running in there, but the way he shaped it and put it out to everybody that I was beaten by a girl, and how I don't know if he called me a wuss or what. He was not a.
And even though we don't use that language anymore, and even though teachers would not say those things, the message is
Yeah, it still
still
comes
can be
across.
floating around out
It
there. It reminds me of my experience with music class. So
yeah.
we were required to take music class, and it was in middle school. Dr. Dorkevsky, we called him Dork. I don't know what we called him. We
Imagine
thought
that.
he was dumb and he was weird. And he had us um, tap with our hand like this. So I grew up in the 80s, and that was like slang for, whatever. I'm not going to go there, but
Yeah.
um, but we just made fun of this man. But the problem was we got a grade on whether we could sing on key or not. It wasn't our whole grade, but there was literally part of our grade. If we sang on key, we got an A. If we were on and off, we got a B. And if we sang off key completely, it was a C. This was part of
That's
not like our
ridiculous
whole
too,
grade.
I mean,
So we're standing in a circle and we're walking. He's like listening, walking up to us. We're all singing a song and he's putting his ear up. And I can hear him. Come on, Menzo. You're Italian. Italians can sing. Here, what if Lori sings in your ear? Then maybe you can sing on key. And so what did teenage Gina do? She swore off singing in public. I was humiliated because I was a girl. I was supposed to be able to sing. There were boys who couldn't sing on key. Did he humiliate them? No.
there went your whole career right down the drain there, right there. You could have been a star.
Now I sing all the time. Ask my kids. I've grown beyond that. So I
Yeah,
can't
she gets
sing
a
on
song.
key.
Hears a word and the song comes up, but
So with these messages that get sent, right? So is this education? Is this, and yeah, we've learned from these things, and things can be very different now. And yet there's still all this pressure. The No Child Left Behind, which I call they leave all the children behind law, and they judge a school's ability based on these stupid test scores. And so the teachers have to teach to be able to pass these tests. And it's like, is this learning?
yeah.
It is, are we comprehending information? Are we just pushing through a system? And so our child decided to go to high school. And so she's experiencing this. And it's very interesting to come into this from an unschooling, a child-led learning
Mhm.
perspective, because we've had many conversations before we pursued this. We are in a county where we didn't have a lot of options, which in some ways I'm grateful for because it could have been overwhelming, the choices. Um, and so it's creating a whole new perspective, and it's interesting to see through her eyes the experiences that she's having, because we grew up going to school from a young age. And I went to public school, you went to Catholic school, and when you grow up with that experience, it's just a part of, it's normal. right? But a kid who's been homeschooled and raised in this environment of self-directed learning at 15 steps into a public school scenario and what that looks like. And the thing she's having the biggest trouble with is lunch because they barely get 30 minutes to eat. And if you stand in line to get the food, by the time you get it, you have 10 minutes to eat and then have to get to class.
Yeah.
That alone can be a podcast because we say our kids need to eat healthy and eating is important, and yet we don't even give them the time to slowly digest food. So
What if we wrapped it up with this thought of we kind of asked about what education is. Maybe what would education really look like if we were to design it or something? I don't know.
well,
Is
we
there,
had that in our home,
yeah,
and we still do.
it's it's learning by them wanting or leaving it open to them wanting to
It's
learn.
very simple, Don.
Okay,
If you want to learn something, how do you learn it?
experience,
You want to learn to, you said you always wanted to learn to play the piano. How do you learn to play the piano?
uh, get a player piano, then I can just imitate it. Um, but it's by doing it, I guess. As I'm not sure how you.
Well, you wanted to learn to play the piano, and
I
there's
haven't done it though. Yeah. I mean, yes, I there's a lot of things I want, and that's one of them. But
okay, I wanted to learn to crochet.
so tell me how. What's the
Well, you
answer to
could
the
watch
question?
YouTube videos. You could pay someone to instruct you for private lessons. You could, you know, read a book about the notes and get on the piano and figure it out for yourself. I wanted to learn to crochet. My grandmother had taught me how to crochet when I was really young, and I made a long chain, and I never had much of a desire to learn more than that. And I'm glad no one ever pushed me to do more than that. And flash forward 30 years, my daughter wanted to learn to knit and crochet. I had a friend who had come over to teach her, and I said, Crystal, show me how to do more than basic stitch. And I learned how to crochet squares and things. And then I watched videos. I learned I do best by watching a video. I can't follow patterns. And I've taught myself different stitches. And I learned by doing it. My first scarf is uneven. It goes, "Mm." And by doing it, and I watch videos, for me, that's what works. Some people learn to read the pattern, they follow a set pattern.
Yeah.
So how do we learn? We read something, we watch something, we listen, we go and we observe other people doing an activity and we join in. There's different modes of ways to learn things, and different things work for different people. Different people have different learning styles, but the key is the interest
Hmm.
to learn it. And so I just want to challenge people to just think about it. Think outside the box. You can't just go in like, okay, I'm going to reinvent education tomorrow. No, but you can think about the way that things are. And if your kids want to step away from something, give them the opportunity to not feel like a quitter. Give them the opportunity to, like, this is an opportunity to be able to do something else. Kids have so much structured time when they go to school, and then they have activities that they need some unstructured time, and they need it in a healthy way. They need to be able to go outside and go through the woods or
Yeah.
um and there's so many different ways to
Well,
engage. Online gaming and connecting with people from a distance. We've done games with our cousins who are now on the other side of the country, and um the magic of Zoom and online video gaming has brought us together as a family when we're in three different states. So I guess I'm hoping people can stop and kind of really think about this and ask yourself to really examine this and not just do what you feel like you have to do, and not just this is the way it is and this is the way it has to be. And like you talked about, you have to do well in school so you can get into a good college, so you can get a good degree and all these things. And that there's so much more to education and to learning than
so
getting on that treadmill. And
just a final thought on my part. You talked about reinventing. You don't have to reinvent the whole system. but you can reinvent it for yourself and for your family. And even if they're in school, you can you can you can work that to be beneficial um, at home and on. So it's not looking at I want to reinvent the whole system necessarily. You can work on helping to do that in some ways, but also just reinventing and thinking about it, how you can do it differently for yourself and your family.
And
So,
listen to our other podcasts where we've we talk about parenting our children, our parents, and ourselves. So we've covered quite a different variety of topics. And so today, just thinking about that whole element of education and um, taking our kids to school or home educating them or whatever method we're using while we're doing all the other things in our life. So jump off your treadmill for a minute, take a minute and stop. Have a day when you stay in your pajamas and eat breakfast for dinner or do something fun and out of that ordinary. I challenge you to find a way to do that and think outside the box and realize that it doesn't have to look a certain way.
well, and that's our podcast for today. We hope you enjoyed it. We would love to hear from you. Leave us a comment. You can also give us a like or a subscribe wherever you happen to be listening to it. We're here to guide you through this journey of parenting, whether it's for children or for your aging loved one. We can answer your questions. We have Ask the OT, which in fact, um, well, this is going to be published afterwards. So but
Check the website. We do
yeah,
Ask the OT often on
we do.
Mondays at 7 and Wednesdays at noon, but once
The
or
next one will be the 25th of September at noon. So you'll be that one you can. And the 21st, I have my EFT tapping group. I do a free tapping group session. Um, and you can find out more information about us at our website at focusedhealthyfamily.com. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on YouTube. That's where you can see our podcast every Thursday. And we have other information up there. The Ask the OT is up there too.
you
So
can also find this podcast anywhere you find podcasts. And please check out other podcasts and other topics we have covered. We've covered things from foster parenting and balance issues and
divorce,
divorce. We talked to the lawyers and negotiators and all kinds of different and single parenting topics.
and we
As
got a lot of good stuff coming up too. We've got some
yes,
interviews coming up that we're excited about. So
and please let other people know. Share the podcasts that might be interesting to them. Like the podcasts, pass it along so that we can continue this work and share this with you. We love being here and talking about these things and bringing in other people. And remember, how you speak to your children and your loved ones today shapes their future and yours.